Yes, guys, welcome to another big Arsenal win in the Champions League. I think we've made some pretty easy work of that, to be honest with you, mate. It was just another night at the office and a big 3-0 win. Always nice to see. A little bit of good therapy after what we saw over the weekend, but in general, first off order, mate, how you doing? You good?
I am great after that, George. I
Yeah.
am feeling good. No need for Nicholas Yova. We'll just get rid of him now. All open play. I'm feeling great, mate. Great.
Yeah, you know what? The percentage of open play goals is just not good enough. We're going to have to improve that set piece performance because, I'm just not liking the difference there. We're too dependent on open play goals at this point. But wow, mate, like what a match. You know what? It was to be fair, I think a game of two halves, if I'm being honest. I think Monaco came into it kind of in the second and did pretty well. But that first half was amazing. And my son, my boy, we will have a Miles Lewis-Skelly section. We must have a Miles Lewis-Skelly section. But in general, mate, so when you see kind of the lineup coming up at you, I mean, some nice names to get on the team sheet. I think that we were a little worried as a fan base in terms of coming into it. How are you with the injury situation and then seeing the team sheet in terms of maybe the balance? Maybe I'm leading you down a question here, but the lineup, first time we've seen Marino, Rice, Odegaard. How are you feeling with Miles in his first Champions League start?
I I was weirdly confident. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, if you looked at the amount of injuries we had in defense, I put out a little video just before it on TikTok, just saying, it's almost a makeshift defense,
Yeah.
but it was what we needed. To have some players that are left-footed on the left-hand side, it kind of just filled me with confidence. Seeing Declan Rice as a six and thinking,
Yeah.
who would have thought that might work? It was so nice to go into that match thinking, I just had a feeling that there'd be so much more cohesion. And
Yeah.
although at the beginning, I was a bit worried about maybe our strength and depth off the bench. When I saw that Timber was there as well, I thought actually we're looking relatively strong. So yeah, I was really happy about it, George.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, okay, I'm going to address it off the top, and we're not going to talk about it again. Fulham makes me angry, makes me weep. Have a look at how even the first 5 minutes. I'd say generally speaking, that left hand side seemed to be purring a lot more than the right hand side, and you could already see Mikel Marino in terms of just what his movement allowed. I don't even think he was particularly incredible in possession in that first half, but just the way that he was able to go out on the outside and provide that threat, that little ball on the inside, and that strong foot cross means that you have to follow him. You have to follow to block that entry. And it was meaning that, the left-hand side was seeing some really good fluid rotations. I thought Declan Rice had a top game. Saliba, again, it's becoming an occurrence now. I think he's just been absolutely incredible for a while now. But yeah, mate, like when I'm looking at it and I'm sitting there, I'm saying, I think the Miles Lewis-Skelly start is a fairly bold choice, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And especially after you've talked about Kieran Tierney in the entire press conference, and there's an option to do that. If we're going to criticize Mikel for not giving opportunities enough, I really think that, the idea of seeing Miles Lewis-Skelly for his first Champions League start, by the way, for the boy to come in, and we will have a section on him to perform the way he did. But really quick shout out to Kivior. I thought actually he had a fairly good match coming into it. And, I think he is for me somebody which maybe isn't great, but he needs games to get into form. He needs to play himself. He does start slow, and it's understandable when you're not starting matches 90 minutes consistently. Like you need to get flow and form, especially at center back. It's one of those positions that you need to establish flow with quite early. And I thought he was really, really impressive, to be honest with you. So the left-hand side looked brilliant. And I think Monaco, to be honest with you, they were a pretty solid team. I don't think this was a case of Arsenal just steamrolling and team that they should have. There was, for me, they're missing their best player, Singo, at right center back and right back. So, I mean, that's a significant miss for them. But they had a couple really good talents, themselves with Ben Seguir. And there's that other young winger who's that left-footed, Aliukshu or something. I think he's that young interior who's really, really good. So, yeah, I think as a whole, they made things difficult for us. But in general, I thought Arsenal did well in terms of creating chances off the counter press, which was something that I don't think we've necessarily seen a lot of this season. And we're going to have to talk about it. I think the execution was poor, mate. Like all match. That really should have been a 6-0, don't you think?
Yeah, I think what you said about, when you text saying, "Oh, you all good to get on?" Like, "Oh, great," and I said, "Yeah, better than our finishing right now." It's transition is not our strong point. Whether it's decision making, maybe it's the actual finishing itself. It's so frustrating. I feel that against a better team, it would have frustrated me more, but it was one of the few times where we go in 1-0 at half time, missing that many chances. And I wasn't cursing at the screen. I wasn't tearing
Yeah.
the remaining hair I've got, George, with my receding hairline. But it's something that we've addressed many times on here. We've said we need a little bit more of a transitional threat. We
Yeah.
need There's a guy who's playing. He played in Italy for a little while. He's gone on loan. He would be a bad choice right now. Sure, you can work out who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think our pressing was the thing that was almost most dangerous. We end up with so many chances. And I do want to quickly just go over Kivior. There was that first half chance that we had where Jesus got put through, and that ball from Kivior was it was outrageous. It's unbelievable. We talk quite often in football about strikers needing form and needing confidence. I think Kivior is almost that kind of player. He's someone that really, really needs, maybe as well. We forget having I always say that the phrase environment is key. But for him, he's had so many different players playing in six in front of him. He's had a constant change of personnel on his left-hand side as well. So this is a player who's surrounded by different players each game and hasn't even got to play himself into form. So I think he wasn't fantastic, but it's nice to highlight some of the really good things that he did today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he had a top performance. And I think just in general, on the first half execution, it's unacceptable. I don't know. I don't want to kind of run away from it. I mean, some of the chances, Jesus had two, Odegaard had a glaring miss himself in that first half's through on goal. When you have the 1v1 chances, again, it's not a huge day to really harp on it because the performance was good. We've generated chances. We've got a 3-0. But I think to not score one of those 1v1s is truly unacceptable. And, it's part of the problem when you sit there and you talk about a criticism of this Arsenal team in terms of being able to execute chances. When you see those things, we lack a killer, we lack a bully, we lack somebody able to really capitalize and to not even test, I think, the keeper in a better way. I mean, really, it is quite unacceptable. I'm trying to find an excuse, but really there is none. It's just they have to do better when they get those chances and they have to be calm. And I think, it is about gaining exposure in those kind of areas more often. But again, you're talking about experienced pros that are missing these chances right now. And I think, Martinelli doesn't escape. He has a beautiful chance himself at the edge of the box where I think maybe Martin Odegaard delayed the pass a touch too much, but nonetheless, Martinelli's in space. He's got to open up and slot that bottom corner. And, I think you're missing 4 chances. So what, it could have been easily 5-6-0. And that's ignoring some of the second half chances that I think we've had brilliantly with Ethan Nwaneri. So again, not a night to maybe bemoan it because the result is still 3-0, but definitely a night to maybe be frustrated about something that's really plagued Arsenal for the better part of 2 years.
Yeah, and this is something that, it's not just us kind of, as you said, bemoaning it. This is something that Arteta will be addressing right now. This is something that they will be going in, they will be discussing what is going wrong. I mean, I was going to say to you then, is it a case of it can't be technique? It must be players essentially backing themselves. I looked at Jesus's that chance from Kivior, which is a 0.46 xG chance, and the way that I just kind of look at body language sometimes, it sometimes tells you more than the actual result of the shot itself. And it just doesn't seem like these players are backing themselves in that situation. Odegaard coming through 1-on-1 after the quick turnover. And he almost looked surprised that, oh my gosh, I'm in this position. I just think if you have a player, I mean, he's not playing fantastically at the moment, but Haaland, that type of player, they will back themselves.
Yeah.
And the difference is when you're talking about, centimeters, millimeters between, the ball and the post, that's the difference. It's quite often you actually having that conviction. There was some great conviction though in some passing today.
Mate, that's
So
the
I'll
transition
let you take.
because no, you know what we have to do is because again, that's so we've got the stuff we need to improve of out of the way. Now we can talk the benefits. And my God, my son, my boy, my man, Miles Lewis-Skelly, he deserves his own section. He was
Mhm.
the bravest passer on the pitch. At 18 to come in and do that, the strength that he shows under contact to sit there and receive under pressure, bait pressure, and then to break free. And it's just prime Musa Dembele for me. And I've been making this comparison ever since, I've been able to see him. And yeah, you know what? The comments know what I'm going to say. This boy is special. He is a
Mm.
serious, serious player. And really, you know what? He's also somebody that I feel, as far as bravery goes and deep buildup, and as far as passing goes and deep buildup, he's one of the very few players in the squad that can make those passes. Like in terms of creating that goal, we don't have somebody consistently that's able to do that from those zones. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think Timber is probably somebody that can do it. Ethan has shown it in moments. Of course, we've seen it sometimes from Martin Odegaard, but I think Miles Lewis-Skelly has a different level of bravery. And, the way he was operating in the pivot was just like a serious pro. He was interchanging in midfield. He wasn't hiding behind players. Him and Declan Rice had a really nice partnership going. And I just think beyond the highlight reel of the past that everyone's going to talk about, this is his first Champions League start. And he sat there like he's been there for years. So I don't want to block you out of this, but what did you make of his performance?
Mate, that's your boy. You carry on, George. I'm not just happy for him. I'm like happy for you. Like it's amazing. Almost friend of the show, Miles. At this
Yes.
point, I feel he was unbelievable. The fact that he won 3 duels in the first half. He had like a 95% passing accuracy,
Yeah.
and some of those passes were just they were risk taking. I remember reading there's a book called The Secret Footballer, and they talk about an encounter with Roy Keane and the first day that Dwight York turned up at the Old Trafford ground, and he had a go at Dwight York because he wasn't passing and taking risks. And I always think at the top level, the elite footballers have to take risks, and for someone to come in and their debut in the Champions League to be playing a position which isn't really his natural position, and to have that high of a pass success rate with the type of passes he was making was unbelievable. The physical maturity he shows is amazing as well. He rides challenge sometimes before he makes those line breaking passes. He is just sublime. I was surprised that he was one of the people that came off in the end. I presume it was probably something that they'd organized
Premeditated.
prior to the game, but yeah. Just so good.
Yeah, no, and you know what it is like. Okay, so when people make the Musa Dembele characteristics, a lot of people are going to sit there and say, there's going to be a lot of stuff said about when you start highlighting really top players. And this is from Ivan Smith. Thank you so much for the super chat, mate. Yeah, Lewis-Skelly should be starting more regularly. Top talent. Look, I'm not going to say I told you so. It's more of a case of I just think he is showing us something that I think that he's always shown in the academy, and to be able to transition it and transition his physicality against adults is special. That's the special part of it, right? Because it's not just his ability to hold off challenges, to make those passes, which on its own is impressive and you can talk about, but he's got this ability to almost strong arm adults. To sit there and shove you off the ball. And his usage of his body is so intelligent. It's not just brute force. It's not just coming in to knock you off the ball. While he can do that and he lets you know he's there, he is somebody that is a very intelligent user of his body. And the way that he's able to bait pressure and his receiving of the ball in tight buildup is really impressive. It's not just a matter of, wriggling out of a tight spot because you've got a loose touch. It's a matter of you basically saying, I want the pressure. I want you to come so I can release higher up. And that's the maturity that creates space that we don't do enough of as far as central progression goes. And when you're asking your midfielders to really find space inside a block, you've got to be able to accept that pressure, play those passes early, and be brave enough to do it. And so I think he deserves his own section because he's just been quietly brilliant. Another player that's been really brilliant. Thank you, Flicky Fact. like Keith Flack, sorry, for your super chat. Saliba, the only player not to touch the ball in the opening goal. Time to move him on. What a ball from Miles Lewis-Skelly. Yeah, it's Sackham. It's Sackham territory. Ultimately, William Saliba needs to do better, doesn't he? In terms of getting on the ball. But yeah, mate, I just think to see this from the young man, and it may have been a premeditated sub, but for me, man of the match, and still maintains the man of the match performance for me. I think, again, top performers, and maybe we can get into, Declan Rice is a 6. You had mentioned it earlier, kind of in the pod. I think we've all seen Declan Rice have a transition season so far. And I think he's quietly, and I think last time we talked, I've been telling you, I believe he's been quietly playing himself into form. Now, where do you stand kind of on Declan Rice in the 6 today? What was his performance like? And what do you think is helpful about maximizing him in these zones?
One of the first things I could see was the raking balls out to the left wing. There were so many that it just, in recent weeks, especially against Fulham, there were times that the tempo was slowed down, that it kind of broke down, and that's not something that I would attribute maybe to Jorginho or the personnel themselves. I just felt that, especially in the first half, it got to about 5 minutes. That they started quite quick out of the traps. I was really surprised how Monaco, as soon as that kickoff went, they were straight out. But there's that out ball straight to the left-hand side, and that's where one of our first chances came. Straight to Martinelli, straight to Marino, again, who's someone that we'll probably address in a minute. And it was so interesting that all of these things that we've been talking about in pre-season, when we knew Marino was going to come in and we were linked to him, it was so nice to see these in action. He's got this amazing ability to kind of win the ball when you don't think he's going to win it as well. There was a lovely breakaway. It was right on the end of his toe. Declan manages to, drag the ball back, beat 2 men, progress forward. We said the other day we were picking, a ultimate player over the years, and Declan Rice was one of the people that we chose for progressive carries. And his ability to drive from deep is something that we don't have with many players. We don't have many carriers of the ball. And it was so nice to see that physically he's just so strong. And I think you could see that Monaco a lot of the time were like, how do we deal with this? What do we do? If we close him, he's able to break away. If we give him time, he's able to hit these balls. It was a fantastic performance from Declan Rice.
Yeah, and just to address, thank you, SQ, for your super chat. Guys, check the player's top distances, who was first. Yeah, look, mate, you know what it is for me on the whole Declan Rice conversation in terms of, I made a comment on Twitter. Really nice to see our first choice midfield for the first time this season. And I think a lot of it has to do, when people don't understand, is it's less even about the individuals, but the spaces that it forces the other team to operate in. And when we're talking about, having multiple people back, and why maybe a Marino, Declan Rice, Thomas Partey midfield didn't work, and why this is something that is a little bit better, is because Marino's a lot higher up. He's able to go and float and be a connector and a glue, as opposed to somebody that's dropping in to help progression. And again, a lot of it has to go to Miles. Like, this is really the big reason I think this worked, because when you've got somebody that you trust so much, Thomas Partey isn't felt like he has to be moved into the middle. There was times that we saw him drop between the center backs, but as a whole, we could see Thomas kind of stay in his zone. And I don't think Declan had a problem with progressing the ball through the blocks, switching effectively. When you free a player and you have somebody that's probably a little bit better in a box-to-box role in terms of his running, people automatically assume I want that higher up the pitch. But for me, you got to have the game in front of him so that Declan is reacting to the game. Because for him, that's the best way. If you want him to kind of be in zones where he's going to be higher up the pitch and he's going to have to turn against pressure, then I just don't think it's something that's ideal for him. So as a whole, things really worked out in this match. I think we had a fun night, a 3-0 all in all. Some really nice performances from people. Guys, make sure you guys in the comments, you can drop down some of your questions. We'll try to get through as much as your questions before we head out. For yourself, mate, last maybe question before we go into the questions, maybe you can walk us through your opinion on what we do going forward, because I think that leaves us with 13 points in the Champions League table. And I think we're facing Girona as well as Zagreb. So, I mean, you're hoping for a positive fixture in at least one of those to guarantee you through to the top 8. Where are you feeling as far as our Champions League form is concerned?
I'm really happy with it. Yeah, prior to Sporting, I had the bit of a concern of away from home in the Champions League. Um, Under Arteta, Europe hasn't been his strong point. It's always been the domestic league. Right now, I'm really happy with how we're looking and how we're setting up. I feel like the players are almost kind of going into these games with confidence as well. I think originally when we had our first season of the Champions League, it was almost like testing the waters. How do we play against these different tempos, these different styles of play? Now we're very good at imposing our own game on other teams, and we need to continue with the same setup as that. I want to see that same midfield. I want to see Miles again at left back. I want to see this. The only kind of changes, perhaps Havertz coming back in. I mean, we have to wait and see with that. But I'm really, really excited about where we go, and I think we will finish in the top 8. I don't think that's any kind of any qualms about that. But where we finish that top 8 now, that I leave that to us. I think that's in our hands now. So it's fantastic. And how nice is it to be confident in the Champions League again?
Oh,
I
mate,
think
it's brilliant. It is. And you know what? It's a really nice, I don't know, it's a nice feeling, right, in general. And just kind of like, really quickly, when you look at kind of the dominance that we've displayed in this match, it's pretty significant, like really quickly going through some of the field tilt numbers. I mean, we've generated an XG of 2.8, limiting Monaco to only 0.33. Of course, possession was fairly split between the two, but we had a much higher expected threat. And of course, the field tilt, we've won on field tilt, so away. We love to see that. But one thing that I want to point everybody's kind of attention to is just have a look on the bottom left of your screen in terms of some of the non-penalty shots and just the domination that we've shown inside the box here. Look, we talked about the efficiency, but it is nice to see the amount of chances that we're generating in those positions. I think having a look at the pass map, the only thing you might say is like ideally you'd like a little bit more connection in zone 14. You can see that box, Marino definitely operating on the outside. I think it had a little bit to do with Martin Odegaard not having the best of games, so that connection in zone 14 seemed to be a little bit less. But I think you can see kind of, bottom right of your screen, Thomas Partey doing a brilliant job in terms of being one of our highest progressive carriers. And of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Declan Rice, who we talked about, the next for Arsenal in general. So as a whole, really top night, I think, a professional performance, really. And I think that, as a whole, when you have a look about it, this is kind of something to platform. I really think that when you have a strong performance like this, you want to carry it into the weekend. We needed this kind of therapy. And I think the 2.8 XG number did us poor. I mean, those chances of 1v1s, they don't really get recorded as much, especially when you stop. So I think it's a little bit higher than what we were seeing. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts yourself, mate, before we get into the questions?
The only other thing I would just want to say about is just Saka. I was about to text you when that second goal came in. I was about to text and say, wouldn't this just be perfect Saka to get a hat trick on a game where we're missing all these chances and he just shows how efficient he is? He's just, again, for a player to come out with 3 more goal contributions and us not even to have a little segment on him is just shows the quality that he has. It's just unbelievable.
No, it was. And so Alejandro, just as a quick reminder, we definitely had a set piece pod that you guys can check on Patreon. If you guys enjoy the content, I don't believe I've done it yet, but guys, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate the support. Nearly 940 of you guys watching. Thank you so much for this. But yeah, there is a set piece pod that you can find on Patreon, which you can find in the link down below. If you enjoy some of this content and you would like more and you would like to see the secrets of the set pieces, we have gone into that a little bit. Let's take some of your questions. So Rabeem, in terms of like only having 2.xg, I think genuinely it's because they're kind of recorded a little bit differently, especially on those 1v1 chances. So I wouldn't really put too much there. Okay, everybody wants to talk January, I guess. From Ethan Townsend, thank you for your question. Who would you realistically in the January transfer window want? And I'll just lead and maybe combine it with something from Dan Peters that talks about number 15, Layman Kamara, who I think had a really top match. That's the all-rounder kind of midfield that Monaco had in the middle of the park. Top match. For you, January, I guess, because that's where everybody would like to go. You build off this, you maintain momentum, you try to increase momentum. What are you looking at? Are you talking about multiple additions? Do you think it needs drastic change? And if we did no change, are you angry? Where are you at with expectations?
I mean, multiple would obviously be lovely.
Yeah,
I think you asked me the question recently. If we had 60 million, who would I buy? And um, I hadn't originally said Lookman, but seeing
yeah,
Lookman again, I mean, he's such a different type of player, and whether we can get the maximum we can from him, I don't know. That's a different question. But his efficiency again, scoring another Rafa Leao, scoring another goal in the Champions League, whether or not they would fit our dynamics and the out
possession work.
of
Yeah,
possession kind of. I don't know, but I would love to maybe have a little look at another attacking player. I think our defensive problems with injuries mean that maybe we need to start looking at, which is crazy to say, but
yeah.
another defensive reinforcement, but simply in terms of depth, not something. I'm not looking at, another Saliba or a Gabriel, or just someone that we can kind of rely on to be there.
Well,
Because right
between Ben
now,
White and Tomiyasu not being able to contribute for the next 2 months, it means that you're in
yeah,
either, do you want to rely on that with the schedule and the fixtures and post ACL? Like, I think that's what Mikel Arteta even referenced in terms of, if injuries continue in the manner that they have, we may be forced to dip in the market. I think I've said before, I really want us to dip in the market. And, again, thank you, Alejandro Tiburcio, again, for your super chat in terms of we need a Sadio Mane for left wing. Do you have
wouldn't
names?
that be nice?
That would be wonderful. Look, I have a name. I think he's brilliant. I think he's the one. I've been trying to find a left winger, and for me, it's Antoine Semenyo. I think he is unbelievable. Another story about whether or not he's allowed to live mid season and about what you're able to do with that. But you're talking about, for me, an Arsenal fan, somebody who's 24 years old, able to play both sides of the pitch, really diligent in his out of possession work, and just a really strong 2-footed carrier. Excellent ball striking off both feet, and as far as you know, as far as what he can do in transition, that's something for me that I think is critical, really, because when you look at some of the things that we've failed on today, it's again that transition, isn't it?
I think he would have been perfect for today's game. He really would be. And the price again, I think it would be a reasonable price. I think as well, I know I obviously mentioned Lookman. I think he's got a release clause that's still available over the January period. So that there are options for us. It's whether or not I do worry about Edu leaving, not simply because of the job Edu did, but because now where a deal's kind of coming through, have we got plans in place? We seem to be a team that always has a plan A, and then we have a plan B. We've seen it with Declan Rice. That was the deal that was like spread out across a very long period. When we had Trossard, people forget, Mudryk was the player that we were looking at for a long period. He fell out. We had Trossard ready. So hopefully, the club have got deals kind of ready to go, and we'll
Yeah.
move on from there.
And again, Su, thanks again for your super chat, guys. You're ignoring me. Can you say
I
who
will
you
try to
think
find
covers
out for you.
most of the pitch, and then check the real numbers? Su, I'm sorry, but if you don't know, I am technically illiterate. The fact that I have managed to start this live stream, let alone share the field tilt numbers, is a wonder to their own. So we can try to get that up for you. And as far as who I think covers the most of the pitch, I would think Martin Odegaard or Jesus as far as our front two goes. I'm sure that Declan Rice does his part, but I, I think in general, the most running parts of our team are like those initial runners in the front two of our press, I would assume. But maybe you can enlighten me if you do have the answers to that. So, yeah, guys, listen, I think it was a brilliant night to kind of wrap it up. In general, great Tester and Ginger palette for Everton, I think. We ended up finding a way to improve our open play, chance creation. I think we need to carry that through as far as our counter pressing goes. I think we need to carry through the bravery that Miles Lewis-Skelly showed. And, other people need to take a little bit of lessons from that in terms of carrying that forward. And I think that this midfield, when given enough time to breathe and enough time to gain chemistry across even just 5 games, will show us something quite special. And the way that we balance the left-hand side attack to the right-hand side attack seemed a little bit more balanced in general. So that was nice to see. Let's carry some of those lessons forward, and maybe let's also improve on some things like our final execution. There's not much to say there. I think we could do a little bit better on 1v1s. But Forder, mate, last minute thoughts for yourself?
I always like to leave with a little stat, George. So I'll do the same again. So this is now our 8th Champions League victory, our 7th clean sheet in those 8 victories. Bukayo Saka has scored 6 of his 7 home Champions League appearances. He has also been involved in 14 goal contributions in 14 games in the Champions League. Like, we are cooking, George. We're back.
We are cooking. The Champions League campaign is developing quite nicely. Let's hope we can carry it through. And as my phone goes off, brilliant timing. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. We hope you guys enjoyed the IR. Again, if you enjoy some of the content, you can go down below and pop into our Patreon. We've got a couple stuff coming out as far as tomorrow, the long-awaited Martinelli Scouted. So guys, look forward to that. We've broken down Martinelli in terms of film, giving you an hour of film. And of course, broken down some stats and what he has done to improve, how can he improve, and what has gone wrong over the years. What's his transition looked like? Things like that. So we hope you guys enjoy that. And of course, we've got the Everton IR to look forward to on the weekend. So guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. We really appreciate all the support, all your comments. I really appreciate it. I'm sure Alex does as well. And so does Forder. Thank you so much for everything. We appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and we will catch you guys hopefully tomorrow after you guys enjoy A, the Martinelli Scouted, but B, relish in that Arsenal 3-0 win. So thank you so much, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.